there. Welcome to this video where you get to learn more on how you can approach various GMAT questions in the GMAT exam. And in these videos, we do select questions from various topics and we walk through them together with you to show you how you can approach the questions using various strategies as you learn better approaches and also probably gain a better understanding on how you can do so. My name is Joshua Obuya, trainer and a mentor with the Kenya Elite Program under the GMAT training section. Welcome aboard and hope you will learn more. Thank you. In this session, we'd like to look at work rate and time problems in the data sufficiency section of the GMAT exam. So these are basically word problems, but more or less presented require some algebraic knowledge to be able to address them. So we'll just dive right in. We'll look at questions of various difficulty and which are the approaches that you can use to solve these questions quickly and accurately in an exam situation. So the first ones we'll look at questions of low difficulty. These are questions in the sub 600 level difficulty. So these are questions which many students don't have a challenge responding to or getting the correct answer, which means many students will be able to get the correct answer. So you could also just pause the video, attempt this question, then come back and see how we tackle it, just in case you have challenges or confirm how your approach is. If printing press A running alone at its constant rate produces 27,000 newspapers in 6 hours, how long does it take printing press B running alone at its constant rate to produce 27,000 newspapers? So here we've been told about printing press A, which produced 27,000 in 6 hours. So 6 hours, 27,000. How about 1 hour? How much is it? Because that's the rate that we need to get. So, and this means that in data sufficiency, I do give much emphasis on focusing on the question stem before going to the statement, by understanding it as much as possible. That way you can be able to know what would constitute sufficiency, what does not. So if it's in 6 hours, it does 27,000. In 1 hour, it will do 7K divided by 6. So these are naturally hit by 3 will go here 2 times and 3 will go here 9 times. So in 1 hour, it will do 9 over 2K prints. That is now for printing press A. But we've been asked about printing press B. That is now what we've been asked about. How long does it take B to produce 27,000 newspapers? So the concept is that unless we know the rate of B in 1 hour, B per hour, let's call it B per hour, that will actually help us get to know what the answer is, or A plus B per hour or per unit time will help us get the answer. So these are the 2 things which you may look for. If you're able to get to know how much work B can do in 1 hour or in a unit time, then you can get to know how much it does, how long it takes to produce 27,000. Or if we get to know what A and B in a unit time does together, because you know what A does in a unit time, we can get to know what B does in a unit time. Therefore, we can be able to get how many newspapers it does. Again, in data sufficiency, such questions don't require you to get the actual answer unless you're asked for the answer. But it's just supposed to prove that the statements are sufficient in helping you get the correct answer or in answering the question stem. That is the main thing to look at. So it becomes fairly easy for you as a student or as an examinee to be able to go about such kind of problems. So let's go to the first statement and see. Running alone at the respective constant rates, printing press B produces 2 newspapers in the same amount of time that A produces 3 newspapers. So A does 3 newspapers, and B does 2 in the same amount of time. So if it is 1 hour, then actually it will get. So this gives us the rate of B, which is one thing which we had asked for here. So if you can get what B does, let me just make it more visible. If you can get the rate of B in a unit time, in 1 hour that is, then we can get how long it takes to produce 27,000. So this one in itself is sufficient. Yeah. If it is sufficient, then that means then the data sufficiency on some methodology, A, B, C, D, and E. If A is sufficient, then we do cross out the answer choice B, and we cross out the answer choice E, C, and E. So you're left with only D, which means we need to assess the second statement and find out if it is sufficient as well. Then now we can have the answer choice as D. If it's not sufficient, then we have A as our answer. So let's look at the second statement. Running together at the respective constant rates, the two presses produces 7,500 newspapers in 1 hour. So now we've been given the rate per hour for the two of them together, which is the second option which we are looking at. Yeah. So this is actually what we're given in the second statement. If you're given A plus B in 1 hour, and you have already for A alone in 1 hour, which means you can get for B in 1 hour, and therefore you can get how many newspapers it takes, or how long it takes producing 7,000 newspapers. Is in machine B. So that reason also, this will also help us get the answer. So which means this one also is sufficient as it is. Therefore, we cross off answer choice D, as in dog, then we have the answers A. So we don't need to go through the messy math of being able to simplify this 9 over 2,000, 4,500. This is per hour for A alone. I don't need to go through all that mess and then mystify it further and get for B, then go ahead. No, we don't need that. You just need to know what would you require. If you want to know what you require, then that would be. So the answer choice here in this case is A, it's an apple. So that would be the answer choice for this question. So now let's go to the next question and take a look at it as well. If machine J working alone at its constant rate takes 2 minutes to wrap 60 pieces of candy, how many minutes does it take machine K working alone at its constant rate to wrap 120 pieces of candy? So we have J. We have J, which takes 2 minutes for 60 pieces of candy. And then that means that in 1 minute, it does 30 pieces of candy. And you can just divide. Again, in 60 seconds, we can probably just say half of the wrap is done in 60 seconds. That's what I can say in 1 minute. So the rate for J is either 30 pieces per minute or half a wrap in a second. That is the rate for J. Now, again, ask how many minutes does it take machine K working alone at its constant rate to wrap 120 pieces of candy? So we've been asked for K to wrap 120 pieces. That's the question we've been asked. So again, the approach is very similar to the previous question. Yeah. What you need to know is you need to know the rate of K, because you need to know how much wrapping does it do in a minute or in a second. That's the one thing you need to know. So rate per minute. So K, let's call the rate for K per minute or K per second. And then at the same time also you can get either this one as the first information you need to know. The second we need to know also, which also can help us get is J plus K per unit time. K plus J, all of it per unit time, or minute or second. So if you're able to get either of these two, then you're able to solve the question. You don't need to get the actual minutes being asked, but just need to know what is the rate of K per minute. How many wraps can K do in 1 minute or in 1 second? Or how much of the wrap can it do? Then also, how much of the wrap can K and J do in 1 minute or 1 second? That means that because we have the rate of J, we can get the rate of K. We can single it out and be able to get that rate. And from there, we can be able to go ahead and find out how many it can do to wrap 120 pieces of candy. So wrap 120 pieces of candy. So that is actually what we're looking at. So the first statement states that machine K working alone at its constant rate takes more than 5 minutes to wrap 60 pieces of candy. So machine K working alone, so K, the rate actually being given, actually it takes working alone, takes more than 5 minutes to wrap 60 pieces of candy. So which means it can take 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, or even 100 minutes. So we don't know. That's one thing. Or even 5.1 minutes. So that means we'll have different rates. And if you have different rates of wrappings of candy, that also means we'll have different times to be able to wrap 120 pieces of candy. You've been asked for a unique answer. How many minutes does it take? So 6 minutes and 7 minutes and 8 minutes, or any other that you may have, will give us different values. If it gives us different values, then that means it's not sufficient in this case, because we only need just one specific answer. So this is not sufficient. So, and in the DS methodology, A, B, C, D, and E, if the first statement is not sufficient, we cross off A, therefore that also means we cross off D. So we're left with investigating B, C, and E, where B, C, 2 alone is sufficient, but 1 alone is not sufficient. Then we have C and E. Yeah. So let's go and investigate statement 2. Machine J and K working together at their respective constant rates take a minute and a half to wrap 60 pieces of candy. So what is this telling us? It's telling us the second option of what you need to get, which is this one. Yeah. Machines J and K working together at their respective constant rates take 1 minute, 30 seconds to wrap 60 pieces of candy, which means now if you have J and K in a minute, they take 60, it's actually 60 pieces, so which means 60 pieces per minute for J and K. That means you can get for K alone in a minute to be a unique number. And then if you can get for K alone, the rate of K per minute, that means you can get how long it takes K to wrap 120 pieces of candy, which means this statement is sufficient. If it is sufficient, then that means B is the correct answer. You cross off B and C and E. Therefore, the answer choice B becomes the answer.
You are watching Success with Bob Mwiti Show, presented to you by Upstake America. Upstake America is a consulting company that helps immigrants find amazing higher education and job opportunities in the tech industry in the United States. You can find our programs by going to www.upstakeamerica.com. Upstake America, we wake you up to the unlimited potential.
Okay, now let's take it a notch higher. These are questions which require a bit more of logic and reasoning, and not just the concepts as we had seen in the previous question, where you just need to find out. If you know the concepts, it should be fairly easy for you to get the answer. But at this level now, because you go higher now, it may require not to put in more logic in the same. So let's take a look at the next question. If water is leaking from a certain tank at a constant rate, is it leaking at a rate that is greater than 12 liters per hour? That's a question we've been asked. Is it leaking at the rate? We're being asked for the rate at which this tank is leaking. That's the question we've been asked. And is it leaking at a rate greater than 12 liters per hour? So we've been told the rate is 12 liters per hour, and also we've been told there that 1 liter is equal to 1,000 milliliters. So which means the rate, is it greater than or less than? For this, actually, is more or less a yes/no question. And for yes/no questions, they're normally a bit tricky. And I think that's where it becomes a bit difficult, because the answer needs to be continuously yes or continuously no. Yeah, which means it is yes, it is leaking at a rate greater than 12 liters per hour, which means either 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 liters per hour, even 12.001 liters per hour is sufficient. If that is what you get at the rate, then that is sufficient. If it is actually a rate less than 12 liters per hour, regardless of what the rate is, from 0 all the way to 11.99999, that is correct. But if in some cases you're getting it leaking at about a rate of greater than 12 liters per hour, or a rate less than 12 liters per hour, then that is not sufficient. That is what this question is asking us. So let us get what other rates do we have. If you have actually 12 liters per hour, and you've been told that a liter is equal to 1,000 milliliters, it does make sense to convert this to the smallest units possible. Probably the rate could be in per second, and probably before you can go further, you can just check, keep in the statements to see if at all the other units mentioned. So you're seeing 2 milliliters per second here, and also seeing 5 milliliters per second. So we can actually convert this to 20 milliliters per second before you can go there. So 12,000 ml per how long? For actually 3,600 seconds. So that is the rate that you do have. So in 3,600 seconds, it leaks 12,000 ml. That is the rate that you're looking at. How about in 1 second? 1 second, that means it will be 12,000 divided by 3,600. So the zeros, and then 12 will go here 10 times, 12 will go here 3 times. Yeah. So you have 10 over 3 ml per second. 10 over 3 or 13, 10 over 3. That is now ml per second. That is 3.33 ml per second. So the question is asking us, is this water leaking at a rate greater than, is the rate greater than 3.33 ml per second? So if you get a rate that is 3.334, 3.34, 3.35 and above, then it is. If it is less than, is sufficient. Both conditions will be sufficient. So let's now go and investigate our statements and see. What is leaking from the tank at a rate that is greater than 2 milliliters per second? So if it is greater than 2 milliliters per second, that means that it is looking at 2.1 ml per second, 2.2, 2.3, 3.4 ml per second, 3.5. So we're seeing we have both yes and no in this situation. So that means this statement is not sufficient. Yeah. And by now, I'm assuming that probably you could be having the rates on your head, and you don't need really to have, not the rates, but the methodology of selecting answers in your head. The moment you find the first statement is insufficient, that means that answer choice D is also not actually an eligible choice in this case. So you rule that out, as also you rule out A. So you rule out B, C, and A. Water is leaking from the tank at a rate less than 5 milliliters per second. 5 liters per second. So if it is less than 5 milliliters per second, that's more or less the same as this one. Just like now, it can be 2.1 milliliters per second, it can be 3.5 milliliters per second, it can be 4 milliliters per second. So this also is yes and no. So it still gives us yes and no, and therefore it's still not sufficient. So answer choice E, it's also crossed out. Let's try combining these two statements together and see if at all we get something that is concrete. If you combine them together, it still falls in the same range of what the first statement states, because less than 5 milliliters per second is actually 3.4 would fall in that range, which is sufficient. 2.12 would fall in that range, which is not sufficient, which also is more or less like it's not at that rate. Therefore, it's giving us two contradicting answers, and still both statements together are not sufficient in this case. So therefore, we rule this out. That means we say that the answer choice means E. Statements 1 and 2 together are not sufficient. And this becomes the correct answer to this question. Yeah. So this is what it mainly requires about the rate. Is it greater than 3.33 milliliters per second? That is what being asked. So it needs to be on either it's above or either it's below for it to be sufficient. If it is giving us both above and below, then it is not sufficient. Right? Let's proceed to the next question. This one now could be more or less like the higher 600s difficulty. And let's see how to approach it. You can pause the video, attempt this, and then you see. In a particular machine, there are two gears that interlock. One gear is larger in circumference than the other. The manufacturer of the gears guarantees that each gear will last at least 6 billion revolutions. Is a million, 6 billion revolutions. Assuming that there is no slippage between the two gears, and that when one gear rotates, the other gear also rotates, the larger gear is guaranteed to last how many days longer than the smaller gear? How many days longer? We've been asked for a definite answer. So we must have one definite answer for it to be sufficient. Therefore, also, this question also we told that actually guaranteed it can last 6 billion revolutions. So 6 billion revolutions, and then we're going to ask for about days longer. Days longer, so these are now time. So you have the rate, so there's a rate, then there's also the ties, and then there's a time rate, and then there's a time. So these are the two things which you do have in this case. So you need to find the rate of the revolutions for each which is arrive per day. And then if you can get the revolutions per day for the two gears, let's say A and B, small and big, small S and B, then we are able to get how long it will take for each of them to revolve. So that is now one thing to do. Once you get for the big revolution, per day. Then now you see in these 6 billion revolutions, then how many days will this be in 6 billion revolutions? The 6 billion revolutions for the small one, how many days will it be? Then now we can subtract the 2 days and see how many days longer the bigger one will actually last compared to the smaller one. That's just the logic behind this. So once you simplify this or not, then now let's go and try and assess the smallest the statements and see. The diameter of the larger gear is twice the diameter of the smaller gear. This tells us the sizes of these two gears. So which one should be true that one is bigger than the other? Then the ratio of the size is actually 1:2. So that's it. So this only tells us is that actually if one makes one revolution, then if the larger one makes one revolution, the smaller one will make the 2 revolutions. But how long does this take? Yeah, time not given. So we cannot be able to get the revolutions per minute or revolutions per day. We can't be able to get this. If we can't be able to get the revolutions per day, revolutions per minute, revolutions per second, we are not able to get how many revolutions the bigger one will make, in one day, so that now you can be able to get how many days will last, and therefore subtract. Therefore, this is not sufficient as it is. Okay, let's look at the second statement. The smaller gear revolves at 600 times a minute. Now, this statement as it stands, it gives us the rate, but we don't know the magnitude of difference between these two gears because the main gear doesn't tell us what the sizes are. So you need to know if actually the smaller gear revolves 600 times per minute, what is the rate of the bigger gear? Yeah. So the small rate is 600 per minute. Yeah, we need actually for the small and the big one. We have for the small one. How about the big one? We don't have the rate for the big one. It's a question mark. If you have the rate for the big one, then actually now we can be able to tell that we can be able to get how many days this one takes for. Because now for the small one, we are able to tell how long it will take for it to revolve. Because now you have 600 revolutions per minute. Therefore, we can find how many minutes in a day and find how many revolutions are made in a day and see a day divided by 6 billion and see how many revolutions the smaller one makes. But we won't be able to check for the bigger one because in this one, as it is alone, we do not know exactly how long it will take. Right? So therefore, we have the first 2 statements are out, A, B, and D are out. Therefore, let's try combining these 2 statements and see what we can get. So if you combine them, then you have the rate of the small one to be 600 revolutions per minute. And then the first statement tells us the diameter of the larger gear is twice the diameter of the smaller gear, which tells us that if actually the small one makes 2 revolutions, the big one will make 1 revolution. Therefore, if you combine these 2, it means that if the small one makes 600 revolutions, yeah, then the big one will make 300 revolutions per minute. That's what it tells us. Since we have now the rate for the small one and the big one, then now we can be able to convert, we can be able to divide this by 6 billion and find how many days they are, and we will also then subtract both of them and get what the answer is. Therefore, C is the answer because we don't need to go ahead and find out what many days they are. But with these 2 values, we are able to get a definite answer for this. And that is what is required in data sufficiency. So as you can see, we've been able to solve them in a very short time. Therefore, this just shows actually how we can be able to go about these questions and be able to address them. So I do want to urge you to go ahead and also probably just in case you have any questions or comments, just post them and share them with us. Yeah. And thank you again for joining this session. Like this one, come again and watch the videos on other topics. And also share with us more questions that may help you tackle. Till next time, bye.